Hey, welcome back to the channel. You can see an array of knives on the table today, and man, they look good, don't they? So what we're going to be talking about today is the type of knife. All of these are representative of a certain type of knife, a certain pattern, and we're going to be talking about that pattern today. It's called a sleeveboard pattern. We're going to talk about the history of that pattern. We're going to talk about how to define that pattern, how to recognize it, and also we're just going to have a little bit of fun and look at some old cool knives. So I hope you join me in the video and check that out. All right, welcome back to the Fortified Castle. Hi to all my viewers. Thank you so much for taking the time to check the video out. I think you're going to enjoy this. I can't see how you could not enjoy looking at all these beautiful, cool, old knives. But not only that, we're going to talk about this pattern. It's called a sleeveboard pattern. Looks like a jackknife to me. Well, it is a jackknife, but it's also a sleeveboard pattern jackknife. And we're going to talk about how you can tell a sleeveboard, what are the characteristics of a sleeveboard, a little bit about the history, where these may have come from, originated from. And that's not going to take a lot of time. So we're going to spend most of our time just looking at some really beautiful knives here. So let's get right into it. So first off, if you're familiar at all with the sleeveboard pattern, this is probably the iconic pattern right here that you might be familiar with. It's generally known as a penknife pattern. A lot of penknives around the turn of the 1900s were made in this pattern. And so I think that's generally what we think about when we think about a sleeveboard pattern. One, it's a penknife. But as you can see here, these aren't all penknives, but they all are sleeve boards. So a sleeve board is not just a pattern used on penknives. It's a pattern that was used across the knife, different knife patterns. Ooh, okay. So what is a sleeve board? Let me find a good example here. Let's pick this one up. So, sleeveboard pattern is characterized by a round bolster. You see how that bolster is just completely rounded there. Both sides taper, not just one, to a larger rounded end of a knife. In this case, the small end is the tail end of the knife. The large end is the head end of the knife. And most of the time you find that these blades are attached to the smaller tail end. But that's not always the case. And sometimes the sleeveboard pattern has the blades attached to the larger end. So these are both sleeveboard patterns. If you flip it over, they both look the same. So in this case, the blades, the main blade, this is an opposite end knife. The main blade is attached to the bigger end. And so that's not only true with pen knives, it's not a penknife thing. It's just some sleeve boards had the blade attached to a larger tail end and the head end was smaller. You can find some pretty big knives that look that way. I don't think I have any here like that. So that is basically what a sleeve board is. And the basic division of sleeve boards, the variation that you might find is the one I just explained. On some sleeve boards, the tail is the wide end and the head is the small end. On most, the tail is the small end and the head is the wide end. That's what a sleeve board is right there. So I want to point out to you what the difference is between these knives and a regular jack. And so if you look at this Barlow right here, you'll notice it has square corners on the Barlow. Square corners. Whereas if you look at this Barlow, a Cutmaster, you can see it's rounded here. It has a round end. Let me see a better example. This is the example right here. This is a rounded end right here. And so that's the difference between a regular jack. And so we would call this pattern a regular jack that has a square end. If it's a round end, it's a sleeve board. And that's the basic difference in these knives. Both of these are jumbo knives. This is a Robeson, beautiful cocoa bowl there. This is a Wolstenholme. They're both jumbo jacks. You can see they're quite large. And if you notice, this is a sleeve board because it has a rounded end. And this is a regular jack pattern because you have the squared off ends right here. Even though it's rounded right here on the top, it has square shoulders on it. And that's the difference between a jackknife and a sleeve board knife right there. It's pretty obvious if you put them up to one another. If you look at this, sometimes you get these jacks that are, I'm sorry, sometimes you get these jacks that are more square. They kind of look rounded because they're pinched here when they make them. But it's a big difference between these squared ends like this and a sleeve board like that. It's just completely rounded here. It doesn't have square sides. You can see how much square this is and how this is just round all the way around. So there's a better example right there. This is a beautiful Rogers jackknife, regular jack. This is a diamond cut horn. So this is actually horn in here. Beautiful diamond cut job on it. Not the most precisely made knife in the world, but I think this was made during wartime. That's why it's not as fine as some of the Rogers knives that you might find. But anyhow, that's what a sleeve board is. We'll just look at some here. This is a Cutmaster Barlow. This is a pretty nice knife right here. Pretty well made for a Cutmaster. Usually they weren't made as well. This is unusual in a Barlow to have the sheep's foot blade on it. As far as I can tell, you wonder about the origins of these sleeve board designs. Here's another Barlow with the clip point, which they usually had clip points or spear points. And as I look back, the earliest I found a picture of these sleeve board type knives was 1890. It was an A.J. Jordan catalog. This is a beautiful bluegrass cutlery Barlow right here. Antique bone. This is kind of made to look like how green bone faded over time. That's what they're trying to do here with this antique look. And that's the earliest I found was the A.J. Jordan. He sourced his knives from Sheffield, England. This is a opposite end sleeve board right here. It's a C. Johnson and Company. Really nice knife in horn. So Jordan eventually bought the company that he was dealing with. I'm sorry, I forget the company that he bought, but it was a Sheffield company. He bought it, and they continued to make knives for AJ Jordan. So this is a split back whittler right there. I think this is a E.C. Simmons. Let's see. W.H. Morley and Son. W.H. Morley and Sons. Beautiful little knife, sleeveboard pattern. A lot of these, this is a pretty common pattern for split back whittlers, was the sleeveboard. But that's the earliest I found this design. You can go back like the 1860s. You can find designs that seem kind of similar to the sleeveboard, but just not quite what a sleeveboard is. And I don't really think the pattern matured and actually became a sleeveboard until the 1890s. At least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Beautiful cattaraugus here. Sleeveboard. It's an opposite end. Sorry. Didn't want to focus. This is a case tested right here. Sleeveboard. Just fell in love with this knife. I was in an antique store, saw this, and had to have it case tested. Pretty good shape. Nice snap on this. This is a Schrade cutlery. This is a interesting story. When I picked this knife up, all the metal was red. It had that kind of red dust look on it, but I could see didn't look like it was heavy rust. It was just covered with that kind of red dust rust on it. All of this was white, and you could barely see these stripes underneath it. And you couldn't tell it was a Schrade cutlery. I bought this knife for $3, and I knew I could clean it up, and that's what it looked like when I cleaned it up. Just a beautiful knife, and sometimes you just gotta trust your gut. See that right there? Great action on this knife, tight. Not really worried about this at all. Hasn't gone any further than what it is right there. Just a little crack. It's a beautiful Gorham right here. Sleeveboard. Silver. Beautiful little fruit knife. Nice. This is a challenge cutlery knife. I wasn't going to buy this. I don't know the color. I don't know what it was. I just wasn't enamored by it, but I finally decided to, and I'm glad I did, because it has some great looks to it, and it's in really good shape too. Nice action on this knife. Really stiff action on it. This is a E.C. Simmons. Beautiful. I love that silver, red, and black on here. Pretty cool. This is a Boker. You can almost say this is an Anglo-Saxon, but you know, both sides taper. An Anglo-Saxon is kind of wider in the middle. One side will be a little smaller than the other, but this is pretty noticeable. So I would call this just a very mild sleeveboard design. Look at that jigging on it. Really aggressive. Nice. This is a cattaraugus. It's old cattaraugus here. And it's been used and abused, but I bought it to rescue it. I run a home for wayward knives. Here's another one, same situation. This thing was really beat up, and it's a bridge cutlery knife, and I kind of restored it, brought it back to its original glory. Bridge cutlery, St. Louis. Nice action on this knife. This is a Sleeveboard, and one of the variations you might see is you see it's an easy open Sleeveboard. I think that's kind of unusual. You don't normally see these as easy opens. Robeson Sure Edge. That mark would date between 1910 and 1920. And just a beautiful knife. I think all these on the bottom are Robesons. This is one that would date to the 60s, maybe 50s. Beautiful, aggressive texture there. Synthetic scales. Cool. It's another old Robeson Coca-Cola wood. You can barely see it. I don't know. One day I may sand these off and bring the color back. But I like, just the old worked look on these knives, the character that they have. So it's hard for me to just, bring them back to what they used to be. This is a beautiful Robeson right here. Robeson didn't use a lot of celluloid. When they did, it was kind of a conservative celluloid like this right here. Beautiful, beautiful. You can see the different patterns in there. Nice bone one here. Look at the character on that bone. This may have been green bone, certainly old enough to be green bone. Has that kind of tan look that green bone had, but it looks brown here to me. And I think it was probably a brown bone. It's another one pre-1940. Beautiful bone. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, man. It's another Robeson Sure Edge. So this, again, dates to the 50s and 60s right there. Kind of, I don't know. I guess that's kind of good. It's a slimmer pattern. It's a big knife. This is a big knife too. It's an older one. These are really cool. And a little Barlow here. This old Barlow dates to around 1910. Saw cut. The saw cut's mostly gone. I bought it like this. Somebody was going to redo that saw cut. Didn't quite make it. The old RCC Robeson Cutlery Company mark. That's that jumbo jack. So let me pull. This is a good sized jack right here. Look how much bigger this is. How much wider. That's why they called them jumbo jacks. A lot bigger and wider than a normal jack was. Kemp shield. This is ebony. Beautiful knife. I bought this knife. I was traveling down the road in Iowa in my truck, and driving my truck and bidding on this knife at the same time. And kind of in a hurry, kind of having to pay attention to what I was doing. So I finally just put a big old bid in it and had to put it down, pay attention to what I was doing. This I got on a trade. This is Rogers, Joseph Rogers and Sons. That's an old Boker. I've shown that before. Man, I love this knife. That just screams, I'm old, right? Just so cool. The engraving on the bolster here. Octagon bolster. Steel. It's all steel. Great knife. Great piece of history there. This is, I think this is a Cornwall. I don't remember what this is. Yeah, Cornwall Knife Company. It's Bakelite. You can always tell that Bakelite, if you take the celluloid and put it up next to it, the celluloid just has so much more fire, reflectivity to it. Bakelites are always kind of muted. It just didn't have the transparency that the celluloid had. Still pretty cool looking. Cool little jack. All right. That's all the goodies I got for you today. Did I show this one? I put this off to the side. That's that Robeson large jumbo jack. And look at the mirror. The top square is mirror polish on here. Look at that. Robeson just knew how to make a knife. 4 pins. Beautiful knife. Beautiful. All right. There you go. All right. Thanks again. Thanks for checking out the video. I really appreciate all of you guys, especially the well wishes. I was sick last week. A lot of people sent well wishes. Really appreciate that. I'm doing just fine now. And thanks again. Thanks so much for checking out the video.